Hello everybody, this is Maniac4Games, and I'm here today on this episode of Collect-A-Thon to update about my Nintendo 64 collection. Now, I have shared about the system itself and the controllers in the past. There isn't really much of an update to that, and I can't recall if I shared about the memory card on one of those previous videos, but here it is, just in case I missed it before. Other things that were new as far as accessories would basically be a 6-foot extension wire for every controller, so that it's easier to play it in my living room. I can't really think of that much as far as accessories. Beyond that, the main thing here is about the video games. So, I did do a video about this before on YouTube and showing what I've acquired since my childhood. But for those who haven't seen that video, I'm just going to catch you up to speed real quick in one video. I got the Nintendo 64, I want to say around the year 2000 or so for Christmas. I remember getting it as a bundle with the neon purplish, like transparent controller bundled in with the gray controller. So it already gave you two out of the box, which is great. My brother and I were both playing video games, so it made it right out of the box easy for both of us to play. And I can't recall every game or what the exact order of the games was, but I do remember specifically Rugrats in Paris was one of the first games I got for the N64. Shortly after that, either Christmas or birthday, I remember getting Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask with the strategy guide, so that was pretty cool. And unfortunately, I don't have the boxes for these anymore. I did have them for a very long time, but I only found them more recently, and then I found someone online who was trying to find the video game boxes, didn't even need the games with them. Made a great trade with those for a very expensive Lego set, so I'm happy with that. The boxes didn't mean too much to me for these games, so it was okay with letting them go. Unlike one that I'll talk about later in this video. So these were the 8 games that I had growing up. But there were still plenty of other games that I knew about thanks to my local library. You see, I was able to rent certain games for the NES and N64. I think they had Dreamcast, but I didn't own a Dreamcast. And you could rent them for about a week or 2 weeks at a time, and then, keep playing as much as you'd like. I don't have any of those save files available, but unfortunately, and I didn't really get any of them when they went on sale at the book sale. I'll talk more about this probably with a whole bunch of other games in a separate video, but for now, these are just the N64 titles that I've been trying to go back and get. And because of that, my collection has grown from the 8 that I owned growing up to like 3 times as much, or 4 times as much. I have sitting now with me 32 N64 games, and most of it was because of the library. So, big props to the library for exposing me to all these different games. And now, through many different sources, I've been able to acquire them again. So, I'm just going to lay them out in no particular order. Not going to particularly rate them or anything. Just going to share what was here. First one I got to mention was a very recent one from 2019, Golden Nugget 64. This one I happened to find after a long time of searching. It was one of the most elusive games on my list to find, and it's not even one that I had like a fondness to play it. It was just the memory of knowing that I played it at that time. But hey, maybe I'll play it again and it'll be something more interesting than what I remembered. This one I actually do have the box with it, and just because it was convenient at the time. I was searching multiple game stores. I went to a Nava at Digital Press. Somebody was able to bring it in, because they have local sellers also bring in stuff for the night to trade or sell. One person happened to have this with the case, with the instructions, everything. And again, at a really cheap price. I was happy. I was so happy once I saw it. I have witnesses to be like, wow, I don't know why you're so excited about this game. I've actually seen this thing turn up one time after this purchase, loosely, and it's like, okay, well, now it's finally coming into stores, because I have been looking for a long time for this. It was one of the harder ones for me, and I'm still happy to have it. Even, like I said, if it's just a gambling game on the N64, I don't know. Mischief Makers is also kind of a tough one to find, but it wasn't really that tough for me. I mean, it just might have been a little more expensive, but it wasn't crazy or anything like that. I can't remember which gaming store exactly I got it from, but once I saw it, I knew I just had to grab it. Next up, we have Diddy Kong Racing, which unfortunately has seen some damage over time for the casing, but still plays just fine. I'm okay with some scratches here and there like that. I've definitely had games in worse condition, and it does give me a 10% off discount at the register. So nothing wrong with that as long as the game works, it's a-okay. Even my copies of games have a few scratches here and there. I am happy that I still have on my Super Smash Bros. Copy, even though the back of it has been really severely worn, I am happy that it still has the Property of Blockbuster sticker on it. This one I do remember purchasing at Blockbuster, in case. I don't think it was it might have just been a rental that they just sold at some point. I'm not entirely sure. F-Zero X has been a lot of fun when I grew up with it as a kid. I still love the soundtrack to this day. And there are still pretty tough tracks on it, but it's still an enjoyable time. I did not get it from this person, if I recall correctly. It might have just been like second and third handed. And you might also notice on some of these, I've actually added some labels onto the tops and onto the sides of them. Well, the container that I use for holding many of these games is just a standard shoebox. So it made sense for me to stick them in sideways like this. But if I ever had the time where I was able to fit them this way, I'd still have it like so. I just had to print out my own labels with it and attach them onto each of these. I don't have it for every single game in this collection, and there are still some I need to update, but at least you know that's there. We have a couple of baseball games that for a while, I couldn't figure out which was which. And after looking up some game footage and hearing some of the soundtracks, I was able to figure out, call me Junior. Call me Junior. That stuff sticks in your head. Even if I'm not much of a baseball fan for actually watching sports or playing that many sports games beyond the N64 itself. They do have some battered backs to them, but it's only on the back. It's no big deal. And like I said, a little extra off the top. Star Wars Shadows of the Empire. I only remember the first couple of levels. I remember it being kind of a difficult game early on. I think the second level was like a train level, which I thought was really exciting for something that wasn't available in the movies, or I don't recall seeing it at the time in the movies. I know they had that later on with the Solo movie, but I digress. It was kind of neat for the story element of it. I also did like how they used the Empire Strikes Back soundtrack in here. So, yeah, Empire Strikes Back is my favorite of all time of the Star Wars movies. So, can't go wrong with that. And maybe I'll get better at it. NBA Hang Time was another one I couldn't remember for a little bit. But once I figured out, oh, it's the one with the big head cheat. There you go. Now I know where to go from here, because that was how I was able to figure this out compared to NBA Jam or some of the other titles. And strangely, yeah, I actually have a bunch of sports games that I've learned through the N64, but I haven't really played sports games beyond that. I may have like a Madden 06 for GameCube later down the road, but that's about it. I'm not much of a sports guy, so why would I be a sports video game guy? Unless you count racing. You know, that might be another topic. World Wrestling Federation Warzone. I, again, couldn't really remember the title of it for a while, but once I figured out by the graphics of it or the create your own wrestler function in it, it was easier to find this. Wasn't too bad. And wrestling games aren't really my thing either, that much outside of this, or even as a sport. Star Soldier Vanishing Earth was actually one I think I got it through eBay. But it was one that I really wanted. This was one from all these different games I've been trying to recollect that I really wanted to get. I remembered it very fondly, very clearly. I love the soundtrack to it. I've probably used it a couple times in videos on the channel, whether or not they're actually about the game. And yeah, it's still a fun thing to go through. I don't remember, though, if it had a co-op mode. I thought it did, but I could be wrong about that. It could be a Berenstain Bears situation for all I know. But yeah, a couple little tags along the sides of it. Maybe I'll wipe out the 435. That doesn't mean anything to me. But also doesn't bother me that it's there, so I don't know. What Tricks I surprisingly got at one point with the box and the instructions, and it was part of the games that I traded away the boxes in order to get a Lego monorail set. Yeah, it was that one. It was pretty epic. I'm still happy with having the game by itself as much as, you know, having any of the games by themselves. That still works. And it was still a fascinating idea. It's still one I actually want to try again because I kind of like the concept of it. It's a Tetris-like game where you're trying to make a landscape that can sustain water. So that way, it has just enough to balance out the water. It's not leaking through. It's not going over things. And it judges your score based off of that. It's a very interesting game. And it's multiplayer, if I remember correctly. Yoshi's Story was a little more difficult to find compared to most of these, but I was happy to find it finally. I did actually have it on the Wii Virtual Console, and then my first Wii kind of, beefed out. It didn't read any discs anymore. I didn't realize that the Virtual Console games were only locked to each system, so I had to go buy it again at some later time. But then I thought, well, might as well just play it on the original. It might be a better option. I may actually do that also with Mario Kart 64. That one I have a Virtual Console release or so, but it would be fun to play with the original controllers as well. And Super Mario 64 is another one that might also be in that realm. It's not hard to find either of those. They are a little more valued and a little more expensive than most N64 games, obviously, but I'm still dabbling if I want to actually do that, or just stick with the downloaded copies I already have. Tetris Sphere, another interesting version of Tetris, where basically you have to line up different blocks in order to free these different robots from a cube. Actually, not a cube, a sphere. A Tetris sphere. Duh, it's in the name. Silly me. I'll re-alphabetize these later. Top Gear Rally, kind of a standard racing game from what I recall, but lately I've heard about a bunch of cheat codes for it I never knew growing up. So I actually want to try those out, especially one that has, as some people described, a vaporwave atmosphere to it. I'm like, that could be interesting, especially for N64 graphics. Virtual Chess, I actually found 2 copies of this, and unfortunately one of them didn't work, so I was able to stick with the better copy and have that here. Again, despite the condition of the package. It's cheesy. It's very mediocre as far as a chess-based video game goes, but I already was familiar with Lego Chess, which was also very corny and cartoony in how it presented itself. I didn't mind this one, but I don't know. That'd be fun to play again. This one I actually picked up more recently at a video game con. So recently, I didn't even take it out of the package yet. This one, Gauntlet Legends, is one of the hardest ones that I've had of trying to find. I've searched video game stores for many times over many months and it never turned up once. Otherwise, I would have jumped at it. So I was lucky to find it at a video game con, and the first booth I saw it at said 45, added a little tax to it. It was about 48, I think, when it was done. And then immediately after the purchase went through, I turned around. The table across from it had Gauntlet Legends, and I could see the price tag was $35 before tax. Oh, buyer's remorse was so swift that day. And also a couple other vendors had it available for sale between 35 and 40, various conditions. I think one of them even had an N64 plastic case to go with it and the instruction manual, and that was at 40. So I do feel a little gypped with that. I feel like I should have looked around a little bit more, seen it in other vendors, and then compare prices, but there it is. It is probably the definitive version of it because right out the gate you can play with 4 people. You don't need a multi-tap or anything. I don't know graphically or control-wise if it's any better than other versions, but it's the one I grew up with, and I wanted to try it myself, playing it at home. I'm actually not sure if this was a library game, as I mentioned before, the rentals. This one might have just been one I remember playing at my cousin's house, along with Super Mario 64. So that was just a good one to come back to. It's basically my first experience with any version of Gauntlet, too. Chopper Attack, I don't remember too much about it, but I have tried playing it recently after getting this, and it's alright. It's basically a helicopter shooting game. You do a couple missions across a landscape, trying to take down other enemy tanks and soldiers and things like that. The one thing that always stood out to me with this game, and made me remember it for so long, was the continue screen, where you had a hand that was kind of floating in space, back and forth, waving back and forth. If you selected yes, it gave you a thumbs up, and I think it said something like, you done good, or something. If it gave you a no, I don't remember what it said, but it would be a thumbs down. Little things like that stick out, and I gotta give it credit for that. Play Fighter 63 1/3. Oh, the cheesiness. I am not going to find the Sculptor's Cut edition of this, by the way. It is a updated version of it. It was a Blockbuster exclusive, limited copies of it, and high asking price on the black market. I am not looking for that. I am happy enough with 63 and a third. I also learned recently about some of the cheat codes to unlock things like Sumo Santa. They're fun to play with. And there's definitely a lot more to this game that I have yet to explore. I remember playing it a lot as a kid, but it's still a thing I need to get into more, or the fighting games in general, and understanding the button prompts and combinations in order to make some really good combos. Or should I say, lousy combos. Also, Earthworm Jim is in this game. And I think Booger Man. Banjo-Kazooie, it has to. I mean, I already have Donkey Kong 64 laying over here. You gotta have Banjo-Kazooie for N64. This was another one that I don't remember ever playing at the library or as a library rental. This was one I remember, again, playing with my cousins at one point. I remember vividly being down at someone's beach house. One of my cousins had a beach house. And we were sitting on a large, like, queen-size bed playing this game. I only remember one static image. I think it was the second or third world or so of Banjo flying through the air with Kazooie. And that was so rich. It was so awesome. I am looking forward to playing it again for myself. I have never beaten the game myself, but I know much about it from other people playing it or just, seeing it back then in general. I don't like that shark. I don't like the look of that shark. I know it's supposed to be friendly, but it's so eerie. It's so scary. Almost constitutes as a Halloween thing because it's so creepy coming out of the pipe, and that's the first thing you see is this large, bulgy-eyed shark made of metal. Ugh. And that's not even talking about the polygonal graphics either. Beetle Adventure Racing. Hands down, one of my favorite guilty pleasure titles on the N64. It's not necessarily a great game compared to, especially we just jumped from Banjo-Kazooie to this, but it's so much fun. I never get tired of this game, and I recommend it to people who haven't played it on the N64. Kevin, I know you know that I know things. I've talked to Kevin Henkel about it. So, this is a great game for just being a simple or relatively simple racing game. It has a couple of power-ups. You can change the color change of each Volkswagen Beetle in the game changes the stats. That's just so ridiculous yet so fun. And apparently there are some unlockables in the game as well that I would like to try out at some point. I don't know if they have any cheat codes to it, but I'd like to see more of that. There is a multiplayer mode where you literally shoot rockets from Volkswagen Beetles. How can you go wrong? And also has a really catchy soundtrack. I've used that before in a few Lego videos on the channel. Blast Core. Time to get moving. Another great soundtrack and another great Rare game. This, I actually think my brother likes way more than I do. I watched him play it a lot, and when I got this again in my collection, he came home from college or something one point, and he wanted to play this and played it for a little while, actually. I mean, more power to him. I guess I'm glad I brought it back into the collection. But, yeah, a very fun game. It took me a little bit to understand the premise of it and how to get through it. But it was a lot of fun to try it again myself. I played it with Sega and Kevin over the summer, and I kept getting stuck on one level because I didn't know which way the train was coming. It was a great time. And I definitely want to play it, more of it. International Superstar Soccer 64. I have no history with this game. I kid you not, I only got this because it was at a Goodwill. I found my Super Nintendo at a Goodwill, a second copy of the N64 through there, which I later basically sold or traded away. And this. I was just like, well, there isn't a lot of video games from this era in this Goodwill. Might as well take them up while I could. And I played a little bit of it. It's soccer. I don't know what to make of it. Maybe I'll give it another chance just to see what it was like. But if I need to trade away a game, that would be the first one to go because I don't have a lot of attachment to it compared to other ones. Lego Racers is the only Lego game on the N64. The only one. And yet here I am with 3 copies of the game. Well, I wanted to complete the LEGO video gaming collection. I actually found 2 of these box copies at a video game con, already having this loose one, because I wanted to get one for a friend of mine who also collects LEGO things and might even be interested in the LEGO video games aspect of it. But also, I wanted to get the box with it. This is the one time I actually care for getting the Nintendo 64 box, very specifically. Because it's for a LEGO game, of course. Now, unfortunately, it doesn't have any of the inserts to it. It is in good shape for the $15 I paid for each of these. It has some of the inserts, except doesn't really have the manual, catalog, anything like that. It still has the game in there. I don't know yet if the game works. I'm still testing both of the newer copies out. But when I do, it'll be good. But I'm still happy I actually have the box. This is the one time I actually care for getting the box for the game. And like I said, I got 2 of them, and they're pretty good shape. So, do I really need 3 copies of the LEGO Racers N64 game? No. I'll figure something out. I'm probably just going to keep one of them, and we'll figure out the rest. And last and latest on my list is Rayman 2: The Great Escape. This was a library rental game that I never played. Among all the other ones I've had some experience with, I knew this was at the library. I've seen it with the plastic casing like they use for VHSs. I remember it having the side of the N64 box like printed on there or something like that, but I never played it. I just remember somebody else renting it, and I don't think it was they were hogging it the entire time. I just didn't know enough to try it myself. But I still like the look of the character, and it still stuck with me, knowing that it was a library game I did not get yet. So I just picked this one up pretty recently, and I'm looking forward to it. It's the first of the Rayman games that I've ever come in contact with. I never played the original Rayman, but I've heard good things. I don't know what platform is best or what I can use it best on, but there we go. There are 32, half of 64, if I may add, 32 Nintendo 64 games that are now in my collection. I mean, a lot of these have been growing over time, as I mentioned earlier in the video. I did a separate video where you might have seen some of these games already show up for that, but I wanted to fill in everyone, keep it up to date, and give a little thoughts about it here and there. I know these aren't really official reviews. There's no specific ranking for a lot of this stuff. You can tell my enthusiasm just the same in trying to get these games. At this point, I can't recall if there are any other N64 games, especially from the library rentals, that I'm still looking for. But I'll let you know in case I do. Thank you for watching this video. Hope you guys enjoyed it all the way through, and we'll see you next time with more gaming videos. Also, let me know in the comments down below if there are some N64 games I haven't tried here yet that are worth checking out. I already mentioned about Super Mario 64 and Mario Kart 64, so don't worry about those. But if there's any other ones, leave it down below, and maybe I'll take a look at it at some later point. Looks like I'm gonna need a bigger shoebox.